So look, let's start from one with from Christine Bakopanos from Foundation House. And she thanks you, Elvis, for proudly and bravely sharing your personal and professional experiences. And wants to know whether Samson is able to support survivors in other states now by technology.
Yes, thank you, Christine, for that question. Yes, we are. It is still somewhat limited. We're very much New South Wales funded, always looking to expand our support and services from Samson. But there are things that we have. We've developed an excellent podcast that's been useful for a lot of survivors, that anybody can access that. So feel free to contact Samson and even ask for myself. I'm happy to have a chat.
Thank you, Elvis. And also from Christina, who works as a trauma counselor, but is not part of the Rainbow community. And the question is, how effective can I be in supporting LGBTIQA+ young people? Or is it more helpful to link them to a counselor who is also LGBTIQA+?
Is that for me, or I can go first?
Either or both.
You go first.
Okay, just I suppose in my thoughts, obviously folks from, and I'm keep referring to them, from the Rainbow community, they relate better to people that are from the same community. You know, for example, I'm counselling gay guys at the moment who, the question hasn't come up, but I think there's a feeling there that what people want to know is that they're safe. I think that's as you would in any counselling session, you want to be safe, be open. If you did want to share that as part of yourself as a counsellor, to say, although I'm not from the Rainbow community, I really am here for you, and I'm here to hear you, and I'm here to support you in the best way that we can. And if I don't, no one's got all the answers. And certainly, I think it's always with that open hands, and let's go through this journey together. And the reason why most people engage in counselling is, I would imagine, is they want to make a connection, they want to talk things out, and they want to try and find a way. Usually, the purpose of counselling, as you would know, I'm sure, is for the person, hopefully themselves, to navigate their own way forward, which is always the most effective way. That's my thoughts.
And I guess what I would add to that is that without allies, we don't have progress. And so, and sometimes being an ally is such a, like it's a very specific kind of a job. You have to know when to step forward, when to step back, all that, and when to listen, which is pretty much always, and when to, and when to shut up, which is also pretty much always. But without allies, we don't get change. And so I guess that my thinking would be, of course, people need someone they can relate to, and it's very, very helpful if you've got someone who understands you just because they understand you because they've had the same experience. But as Elvis has beautifully said, what you need is someone also to walk beside you. And I guess that the other thing that I think that's worth saying in answer to that is really, really significant to not assume that if a person has a diverse gender, sexuality or body. And so if you treat everybody as if they may or may not, be whatever they may or may not be, it opens up the space for people to be able to disclose to you or talk to you or be safe with you. And so I guess that when we're talking about things like pronouns, the reason that stuff is significant is because when somebody sees that I'm saying that, they go, oh, maybe they get me a little bit. Even though I clearly have the enormous privilege of being a cisgendered woman, I might have a tiny, tiny, tiny insight into what it might be to live as a gender diverse person. And that's not, and I'm not suggesting I know, I'm just saying that it's providing openings. What do you reckon, Elvis?
That's great. And again, to complement what you're saying, Grace, is just to say that it's physical cues are really important. So if someone's telling you something really important, coming out or whatever it might be, I think as a counselor, if you're not from the rainbow community, the worst thing you can do is react or be confused or like, I'm not sure about that. Or so these things are super important because they're very micro situations, but you remember that because you're already on high alert. And if someone's there sitting, responding, and we often would perceive things negatively because it's just in our nature. So if I see you cringing up or you're unsure about something, I'm going to then get alarmed already because I am already prepared. My senses are already heightened. So it's being about very much aware about how you respond to that person, whatever they bring up forward. I think that's really that's why I mentioned those three things when I did come out to people, and the fact that those folks handled it very naturally and it was just a normal part of life. I remember that because I was like, oh wow, okay, because behind me I was like, breathe through this and get ready for something negative to come my way. And I guess that's what folks might be looking for, trans folks or whoever. If they're coming out with something that's really important to them, they're ready that something bad's going to come back. So you just, that's that physical response, and what comes out of your mouth is super key. It needs to be needs to be neutral and caring and supportive.
And not assuming
And it's okay to say that. Be open about it. I think it's that's what an ally does, is just accept and go like, that's okay. Thank you for sharing that with me. Let's keep talking.
Thank you for that great answer. I got another question from Ruth Kennedy, and it reads, I'm a lesbian and have worked a lot with queer community, which I love. Knowing that so many cultures are homophobic, I have never disclosed my sexual orientation to certain groups, as I don't want it to affect my work. Whilst my orientation is not all who I am, and I don't feel the need to disclose who I am, I'm starting to feel that it is important to be open about it, if asked, and I need to model healthy self-acceptance to the world. What do you think about this? And that's, of course, for you, both of you.
You want to go for? I'm deferring, but I'm happy.
Yeah. Look, Ruth, I'm not sure how old you are. I'm 42. I'm turning 43 this year, and I've moved on. I'm just like, it's out there. It's it's just part of my normal life, and it. I think, and I accepted that quite a while ago now, like 20 years ago. I just. In therapy, it might be different. If there's a question to ask, I wouldn't necessarily be out there sharing it. But in terms of work colleagues or other people, I just throw it into conversation. It's just an open it's part of me. It's part of my normal functioning. So I've never had an issue with it, and that I know of anyway. So that's just my thoughts. I don't know, maybe it's just age, and I'm just like, I moved on. It's I don't want to say I don't care, but it's kind of like I don't care as well, because you're living your life.
And what I would say is that what I think is critical is safety. So for me, there's absolutely no risk in my coming. Well, actually, it's not true. There is risk in my coming out, because invariably you do face discrimination. And as a person that can pass for straight, I could, if I wanted to, not do that. So I choose to come out because I think partly it's an act of solidarity, and partly it's an act of going, you really can't tell anything about a person by looking at them. And so I think those things are important. But actually, I also think that, especially for our clients, that we must never, ever, ever tell people they should come out. I very, very strongly believe, especially for people who are crossing a whole bunch of intersections, that they need to have a place that is safe, and they need to be able to live in a way that is safe. So sometimes a person might need just to tell one person, And we call it inviting in or coming in, and Sekna Beckett is the person who's responsible for that concept. So rather than having to do the big Western thing of telling everybody everything, for a person for example, any number of the people that I work alongside, nobody knows anything about their gender, sexuality or body except the very few people they choose to tell. And I think that's very, very significant. I think for me as a middle-aged, middle-class white woman, I have an obligation to be open, but that's a personal thing. For the people I work with, I certainly never suggest to a young person or that they needed to do that, or to, that the disclosure is dangerous for people. And so I think for you, it's a different thing maybe, but it's good to just honor that. It is dangerous. It impacts your employment. It impacts what, how much money you earn. All sorts of things. It can impact your safety on the street. These things are true. And people will modify, I'm going to stop talking of this, I promise, but people will modify themselves in order to not experience stigma and discrimination. And then you get in a cycle of invisibilization and stress. And so I guess what I would say to you is it safe? Is it going to help somebody else? Is it valuable? And, there's a bit of a like, okay, I'm cool, it's easy, it's all right, I've done the work I need to do.
And Bruce just put a second part to that question, just clarifying that her main question is not in relation to colleagues, but rather to clients.
Okay. In that respect, thanks for clarifying, Ruth. My suggestion would be, and I've done this with, for example, with some clients, is it's just been in conversation, and I would have said something. Oh yes, I did that too when I went to Mardi Gras that time, or I went to a fair day, and I'll make a reference to an activity that's part of the rainbow community, just to kind of, because they'll pick up on that if they're aware of it, and it also leaves the door open if they did want to ask. In each case, I'll be like, yeah, I don't mind sharing that with you. So yeah, that's potentially a way you can manage that.
I mean, and I think when you're working with people, disclosure of anything personal about yourself is something you're navigating through, isn't it? Like, what do you tell people and don't tell me? And how interesting is it for them to know about your life? But I would say that the more relaxed you are, and the more confident and comfortable you are, and the more that you can see it has a purpose. Like, you're not going to tell anybody anything about your personal life unless that you're working alongside in that way, unless you think it has a purpose, are you? So I guess I would apply those same kind of boundaries.
Thank you. Let me take you to the next question, which it comes from a different angle. It comes from Peter Norton, who's the coordinator of a FICT program. And it reads, I work a lot with bicultural facilitators drawn from the refugee communities. They often have strong traditional perspectives on gender and sexuality. What to do to sensitively encourage them to adopt a more affirming stance without suggesting they need to abandon their religious traditions? And that's a
it's a small question for the last 8 minutes, Peter.
Yeah, you go. You go.
Look, I think that what you need to do always is we build trust, we build knowledge, we raise awareness, we normalize, we don't try to enforce ideas on people, but we do in the same way that if you were working with someone around intimate partner violence or anything that's incredibly, can be quite difficult or sensitive or taboo. We have legal situations in this country. We have all sorts of things, but what I personally think is the more open-hearted you are, and the more generous that you are in the way that you listen and the way that you can be with a person, the more likely you are to get a dialogue going. no, you don't have to suggest that someone gives up their religious beliefs, but you could tell them that there's in fact a whole, group of people called Sydney queer Muslims who maintain their religious beliefs, but also maintain intersectional identities and queer identities. For example, there are Christians. I'm really absolutely not saying anything specific about Muslims, just saying there are plenty of Christian people who have really quite incredibly bigoted ideas, gentle, but also clear. And I personally think the less it seems like it's a huge, difficult, terrible thing, and the more it seems like it's just a part of a person that is significant and causes discrimination, distress, whatever, but it gives you a space to talk about it in a way. I don't know, Elvis, what do you reckon?
Great suggestions, even adding to what you said, is connection. Most of the times people make judgments because they don't know. Most folks don't know other gay people, or they don't know trans folks, or they don't know. So if there's any way for you to tap into having some other facilitators come along to speak to a group, come along to meet the facilitators, and there's that connection, for example, I'll just use myself as an example. I've gone to, a group and lots of straight guys, and by then when they found out that I'm gay, they're like, oh, right. Oh, you're just okay. You're not like some sort of freak or monster or something else that I might imagine. You're human, and we made a connection, and it's, so that's kind of, I know we're short on time, so I'll stop talking, but yeah, I think for me, it's the same thing like folks who might be racist. They probably don't know any black people, do they? And when they actually meet somebody and they realize who they are, they're human like them, there's a connection. And that's how most of us can relate.
And you mean it's exactly as you say, Elvis, in the same way that you wouldn't say, I don't see color, I'm colorblind. It's really significant not to say I don't see gender or sexuality or intersex variation, but it is important to challenge those things. But the more you can do it in a connecting way and a normalizing and a humanizing way.
Thank you. I might take you to the next question, which comes from Christine Bakopanos, Foundation House. And she asks, any suggestions about how to respectfully and safely ask my young clients about their gender identity and pronouns? If newly arrived refugee and people wondering if some may or may not yet have this language of pronouns, which, coming from different languages I've experienced, obviously, it changes a lot. So, any suggestions that you can have on that?
You go on. I just did the last one. We're alternating.
Okay. I suppose it's about them finding out their own. It's their journey. So it's them finding a little bit more about what pronouns are and what they identify with, and whether it's just queer to start with. It might be just that, and it's kind of hearing them, and it's maybe just calling them by their name because that's what they want. So I'd suggest don't overthink it. Leave it in their capable hands, because it's a journey, it's a discovery. I might be him today, next year I might actually adopt they, them, because it's part of my journey, so I'm just suggesting that don't overthink it. Just let them kind of come to you with what they feel is appropriate.
And I think in addition to that, I think that's really, really wise. Elvis, don't overthink it. But also I think it's just about opening doors. So, even if you do just go, oh, I'm Grace, I'm she, her, that opens a door. That person, the young person go, why are you saying that? That's weird, or how would we do that in, Tongan, for example, like what on earth, and so you can also just open doors a little bit, and then I think there's other things possibly too that might be, thinking just being able to be very relaxed in yourself. I know it seems very, very basic, but I think it really helps, because the more relaxed you are, the more relaxed other people can be. And if they don't have the other thing is not to get all caught up in the terminology. The terminology is evolving. Every single day it's growing. It goes, there's another word or another way of thinking or another. And so if you don't get too caught up in having to get it absolutely right, that really helps as well, because it's a constant round of mistake making. You know, I will look at this, you know, in a week's time and go, I can't believe I said that. You know, it's what did you say in your presentation, Elvis? The worst mistake is not trying, you know.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
I think we've got one last question in there for these last 2 minutes that comes from Emily. And it reads, I really appreciate the lived expertise that you've all shared and Crystal's story. In my work with young refugees, I have seen the very painful interface between their religion and their queer identity. I heard that Crystal is working for some of these. Can you talk a bit more about how she's doing this?
Yeah. Look, I think there's any number of things, but I think the core things are she has connections within her own community. So she has strong protective factors and networks and places she can return to. So I think that Elvis, that just in talking about in relation to safer spaces, whatever that might mean, but that's one of the things. Having a base point that you can come back to, you can be stable in, is a really important starting point for starting those conversations, because if they become dangerous or there's harm caused, there's a place you can go and get help and support and revitalization and a sense of yourself again as somebody who's incredibly valuable. I think that she does it also in a whole series of other ways, and some of them is being out and actually talking to people and raising awareness and answering questions and being open, and this incredible generosity of sharing her story is a way that she does it as well. I think that she does it by just actually being able to listen to people. So when people ask questions, sometimes they're terrible questions, and we talked about that a little bit, but actually going, no, that's not an appropriate thing to ask me. You know, would I ask you about that? Is that okay? So actually batting back to people. And I also think really, once again, it's that stuff about education. I don't know, Elvis, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, all wonderful thoughts and ideas. I think, yeah, it's just giving that people the space, and you know, sometimes that safety that you just mentioned, sometimes you just want somewhere to be this safe, and it's the smallest thing, having a little rainbow flag somewhere in the corner of the office, or a little trans flag in the corner of it, just represents that little bit of safety. It's not asking for flags to be everywhere and to be lots of signage. You just want that little sign that that this is a safe space. And I think that's where you start. It opens up a lot of doors.
Thank you both, and that's a great way to finish up. What's been really such a great clinical masterclass. I really thank you, and congratulations. I mean, it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Albert.
I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure that I'm certainly coming. You know, many people have mentioned this. Our audience has also sent a lot of messages saying how much they've enjoyed it. Now, before I'm going to take one more minute before we finish up, and like to let you know that I said before I was thinking of financial year, but of course we're in the calendar year, so this is only the second, and so we got 3 more to go. The third masterclass is actually on moral injury experienced by survivors of torture and trauma, from research to clinical implications and treatment. That's the title. It's going to be on Wednesday, the 20th of July at 6:30 p.m. as always. And our guest speaker is going to be Dr. Joel Hoffman and staff speaker Joshua Hall. It's again, another very interesting topic. Moral injury is something that, I think is almost, defining aspect of the refugee experience, but certainly ones that sometimes has not been paid, the attention that it deserves. And so we look forward to be able to share this topic with you. All the best. Have a lovely evening. And thank you again, Heather and Elvis. And thank you, Nuri and Melanie, and everyone else that helped organize this masterclass. And thank you all for those great questions and for being with us tonight. All the best. Bye-bye now.